Hello and welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series on ransomware. In part 2, we're going to focus on 4 topics. We're going to talk about messaging, reporting to the FBI, notification, and threat actor communications. Now, I hope all of you that are listening now sat through part 1, because in part 1 of this series we talked about a ransomware event, the types of ransomware events, and provided an overview of responding to a ransomware attack. And part of that discussion, we touched upon really all of these topics. We touched upon messaging and its importance throughout the process of throughout the response process. We talked about reporting to the FBI. We talked about notification, and we also talked about some threat actor communications. But we just touched the surface in part 1, and so in part 2 we're going to dive a little bit deeper in these 4 areas. So just as a quick recap, in part 1, we talked really about the 6 main stages of a ransomware response. And we talked about engaging vendors, containment, restoration, data collection, forensic investigation, and assessing legal obligations. And really what we're going to focus on now in part 2 is, I'm going to call it stage 9 for purposes of this presentation, but it's really dealing with third parties. And what do I mean by dealing with third parties? Well, it really comes down to messaging, reporting to law enforcement, notification, and talking with the threat actor. Those are really the 4 areas that we're going to focus on today. So when we're talking about messaging, and I'm going to group this into really third-party communications. And when we talk about third-party communications, it's very important to know what to say. It's also very important to know what not to say. And it's also important to know when to say certain things. Now, often when I have a client that I'm helping respond to a ransomware event, they've already gone ahead and they've told their employees, we've had a ransomware attack. And sometimes that creates panic. Sometimes that causes the employees to start talking to friends, and then word gets out. And now you have potentially PR issues to contend with as well, because you have to respond to media requests about, we understand that your organization has suffered a ransomware attack. Tell us everything you know about it. Conversely, I've been in situations where it was very clear that the client had suffered a ransomware attack, and it was very clear because all of the systems for the company were encrypted and there were ransomware notes on pretty much all of the workstations, yet the organization leads wanted to tell the employees that we had just suffered a network interruption. And so what's the point of me telling you these stories? And the point is this: it's always important when doing the messaging to third parties to really be mindful of your audience. And that means that there is not a one-size-fits-all message that's going to work in every situation. It's very important to consider the community that you're in, the type of company that you have, your relationship with your employees, the level of sophistication of your employees, right? If you're dealing with a tech-savvy company and you try to tell the employees that this is a network interruption, that may not go over very well, because the employees will understand that you are lying to them. So you have to always consider your audience. And so whenever I'm talking about messaging the ransomware event, I always want to think about 4 main things. One is who we're going to message. Sometimes that means we're going to talk to the employees right away. Sometimes that means we're going to talk to important customers of the attacked organization. Sometimes that means we're going to talk to vendors of the attacked organization. Sometimes that means we're not going to say anything. It's really going to depend on the audience. And all of this is the underarching theme of all of this is we want to do what's best for the organization, what we think is going to minimize the impact of the event on the organization, both from a business side as well as from a legal side.